Hey everyone, I'm Aaron Potratz.
And I'm Nathan Hawkins.
We are the Shrink Think
Podcast,
Podcast.
baby.
Enjoy the show. All right, let's get it going.
Let's get ready to be excited because we always are. Yeah, we're done. Don't make it so uncomfortable for our audience, Aaron. All of those 3 people are going to be like, wow. Except for maybe 2 years from now, we have another 15.
Wow, so much faith in our
well, not that. I'm talking about YouTube. It's just hard to break into, man. It's hard to break into.
Yeah. Okay.
That's for you.
That's right.
Okay, well, that was what it is. Let's go.
All right, clock. Make sure you get that. Hey everyone, welcome to the Shrink Think Podcast. We are, as always, excited that you are with us. Not that we are with you, that you are with us on this podcasting journey. We've got some more fresh new content. We're finishing up a series on John and Julie Gottman's 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse. They are these relationship experts that know all kinds of stuff about what works in relationships and what doesn't work in relationships. And we've been through the other horsemen, which are defensiveness, contempt, criticism, and...
Now we are on stonewalling,
right?
Yes.
That's right. And now we're on stonewalling, the last one. And stonewalling is the last one, and this one is usually a response to contempt. So what we've been doing is going through them kind of one by one, the first one being criticism, and then defensiveness being like a response to criticism, and then contempt being another one, maybe a response or a reaction to defensiveness, and then stonewalling being like the last one in response to contempt. And we talked last episode, if you have not listened to that, about contempt being like the most dangerous, the most damaging one, because it's like very toxic. It bleeds out all kinds of really bad things in the relationship. And then stonewalling, I think, can be really awful as well. But there's I think an understandable root that we were talking about just off camera before we were recording this episode. So if you're only listening to the audio, head on over to our YouTube channel and check us out. Link is in our bio here for our YouTube channel, because we do talk about some stuff before and after the audio for this episode. But we were talking about that it actually has some roots in some very normal, very understandable experiences and behavior that then goes awry. So like what you do with that, it turns into stonewalling. So Nathan, walk us through a little bit of what's going on for somebody maybe before they stonewall, as they move into stonewalling. What's going on usually?
Yes. Okay, so let's take a big picture here, right? So as Aaron just introduced, we've done the other 3, and think of this more in terms of like this escalation. Okay, so of the 4 horsemen, probably the worst ones, the ones that are kind of the most predictable for your relationship is kind of not going well, bro, are actually contempt and stonewalling. Criticism and defensiveness are kind of in a way like a lower level response. Like they're not great, but that's not good.
And in a sense, they're kind of normal, you could say. Like they're going to happen. People might move into criticism, or they might move into defensiveness or whatever. But when they then go farther into these other 2 categories, is what you're saying.
Yeah. So little bit of big picture integration, even to add in a little bit more. We did the fear triangle a lot, right? So those 4 woundings: betrayal, abandonment, rejection, and unacceptance. Unacceptance and abandonment are the big ones, and rejection and betrayal suck, but
Right.
but they're not as final, right? And there's a finality to contempt and to stonewalling, because in both of those cases, the person is done. They are not entertaining what's going on. So what's happening is the stonewaller probably has tried to say things differently or tried to interact, they're on, if you feel, as you're hearing me say this, like, what are you talking about? This person does this all the time. No, they're not. I'd say, okay, well, they have other stuff going on in their life then, and they probably don't want to have a conversation about anything. And then when you're like, okay, we need to talk about this, and they are like, maybe they're resistant, or they outright tell you that they don't want to. At that point, you keep pushing, and then they teach you that they are specifically not going to tell you what's going on. And inside of their body, they're getting charged up with adrenaline and a bunch of different chemistries going
cortisol.
on. Yeah, cortisol. The cortisol is the big boy. Stress. And it kind of, that works to debilitate. It works because at that point, the person is all that they're thinking about is how they're mad at you for even trying to talk about whatever. They're not listening to anything you're talking about. And they're kind of saying, like, I'm going to teach you that I won't. Like, welcome to the jungle, baby.
So internally, you're talking about all these chemicals that are happening, that somebody is kind of getting filled up with, like their brain is getting splashed left and right with all this. It's like waterboarding for the brain, right? With all the chemical waterboarding for the brain. And at a certain point, the person is probably, whether they know it or not, and I think that's important to understand, that some people, they are aware that this is happening, and other people may not know that this is happening, and this is just the response that they take to what's going on, what they're experiencing. But they get flooded, they get physiologically overwhelmed, where their body is like tight, tense. Emotionally speaking, they're like filled up. Maybe they're like just so overwhelmed. Maybe they're just so scared, frustrated, whatever that may be, that they're like in a like probably a fight or flight, maybe even a freeze response. And the physiological flooding means that they cannot think clearly, and sometimes they cannot communicate clearly. And what needs to happen for people is you got to get yourself regulated. They are dysregulated, which is normal. That kind of thing is a normal thing, right? We can have emotional conversations, we can have conflict, we can have something happening and we get scared or frustrated, angry, and we can become dysregulated, but then it's our job to regulate our own emotions. So if you're a stonewaller out there and you're listening to this and you think this might be you, you've got some emotions that are going on that you need to regulate. It's not your partner's job to make it better for you inside of your own body. You have to regulate yourself. So what's happening is they're getting flooded, most likely, and then they're making a choice, whether it's an intentional choice at that moment or it's the result of a pattern of choices they've made a long time ago, to not communicate, to shut down, withdraw, disengage. We're not going to talk about this anymore. That's the stonewalling. So the idea is that there's like a wall that gets built between that person and you that you just cannot breach.
So at the risk of belaboring this, we've talked about this in previous episodes, more so, but there's two different parts of our nervous system. There's our sympathetic and our parasympathetic part of a nervous system, right? So on the parasympathetic is like described as the brakes, sympathetic is the gas. So it is probably more unlikely with stonewalling that it would. So on the parasympathetic side, what you see is more of the flight and freeze. And on the sympathetic side, and this is going to be a new word for some of you out there, you would see the fight or fawn. So what happens is the body charges up, and sympathetic is like where you feel that like flush of getting red. You're red-faced. You're maybe you want to move, but maybe you can't. So if you think of those two things happening at the same time, so if you got in your car and pushed your gas pedal and your brake at the same time, there would be a lot of energy going, but nothing would be happening. So then on top of it, like to back up and hit this at a little bit of a different angle, anger occurs when expectations or goals are not met or boundaries are crossed, right? So you have more, that's where I think we get more of that intention from the stonewaller in the background, because they may have a buildup of expectations that didn't get met in their mind, whatever those expectations are, or they feel that you are crossing a boundary, and the only thing they have left in their mind is to shut you down. Like they are not going to interact with you. And so the antidote, for dealing with, for moving out of stonewalling is actually, at the end of the day, space. I mean, this person has to come back to this planet. And really, you can't help them aside from leaving them alone.
Or giving them the name of a good therapist. No, don't do that. That might actually add fuel to the fire.
Yeah.
But if you think that is the case, where they do need therapy, go back and listen to one of our other episodes, how to talk to somebody, how to encourage somebody to go to therapy, because there is the way of having that conversation that's delicate. And all joking aside, it may be that the stonewaller does need some therapy. Maybe they need some help dealing with their own emotions. Maybe they need some EMDR in dealing with some trauma that gets activated in some of your conflict or whatever. But if you're the stonewaller, the antidote to this issue is to have some space for yourself and to regulate yourself so that you can re-engage the conversation.
Yeah, if you think in terms of the expectations and boundaries component, really, if a person is regularly stonewalling, if that's kind of their thing, right? Because a lot of times stonewalling can happen in a relationship, and it's very intermittent, because like we were talking about in the beginning, there's a buildup, right? So, and there's a flooding, which flooding shouldn't be happening all the time. That's kind of where I'm going. Should not be happening.
If it is, Houston, we have a problem.
Right. So if you are a stonewaller, like, okay, well, I've been told this, or, then probably what you have to do is you have to back up. You have to start to understand what your needs are. You have to try to take yourself seriously and what your expectations are and what your goals are. And then start looking at, like, the last time that somebody told you that you were doing that. You're going to have to look at, well, were they crossing, in my opinion, you're only you, right? You're you. Did they cross some boundary? This is when you get into where the therapy component is a thing, because then you're, like, thinking about, maybe your memory goes back to your mom or dad or caregiver telling you something, and then you're like, and that's where your mind immediately goes. Well, probably you could take some time to reflect with somebody that's a professional.
Correct.
So go get therapy. I can say that, see, because we're on a podcast. I don't even know who you are.
That's right. But if your mind doesn't go there and you're processing these expectations, potential boundaries, I think, and this is where getting regulated and even talking to other people about this and even potentially your partner about this eventually when you're both calm, is really helpful, because sometimes for a stonewaller, you did not know your expectations. Maybe you didn't even know you were expecting this, and then when it didn't happen, you got angry and stonewalled, and you don't even know what's really going on. So that needs to happen. You need to have some awareness. But also, you might not have communicated your expectations or your boundaries to the other person. Maybe they did not know that you were expecting this, or they did not know that a boundary was crossed, or that you even had that boundary in the first place. And so there's also some awareness about, like, what do I know about myself, and what have I communicated about myself to the other person. Now, if that's the case, that you are aware of these things and you have communicated them, stonewalling is still not okay. Still not okay.
Still losing.
Right. Because it's very damaging to the relationship. You need some other tools besides stonewalling to navigate this situation. And we're not going to go into that, because that's a trickier situation where your partner may not be responding to any of your bids for connection, any of your requests for needs being met, any of your boundary assertions, any of those things. And if that's the case, you might need some different kinds of boundaries besides stonewalling in order to keep yourself safe, or protect yourself from anger or rage and whatever. So that aside, right, stonewalling is about needing to regulate your own nervous system so that you can re-engage.
And it is really, I mean, stonewalling actually, on the part of the stonewaller, is an effort to regulate your system, because you're flooded. Now, there's a part of you when you stonewall somebody that feels like, hell yeah.
I got you.
I got you, baby. Like just stay over there. And that feeling of like a little bit of serotonin shows up and gives you a little pleasure hug. And you look and you're like, wow, they really want to know something from me. And they can't get at me. You know, and that little neurotransmitter hit actually does make you feel kind of good, right? The problem is there's only really 3 things that metabolize the cortisol. That's the pain, right? And it's sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I'm just kidding. It actually is sex, and it's exercise, and what was the other one? I'm brain farting. Laughter.
Laughter. Yeah.
So you're not doing any of those. So when you have the serotonin push, which is a pleasure neurotransmitter, all that does is mask the cortisol. Like that's not going away. You have to have time apart to slow your body down physiologically and that kind of thing. Which is also why, by the way, the temptation. And I've been dealing with this more recently. I don't know why I've got all the couples in the world. Like I think I have all of you. If you guys are couples, I'm probably seeing you right now. Whoever's listening to this in whatever country you're in is what it feels like. But a lot of these people are feeling like, okay, well, you're intentionally not engaging with me, and stonewalling, and you like it, and that's all you want to do. The end. Like, well, no, and so then they think that the endorphin hit on the other side, they just want to move on, right? So you go take your break, and you feel better. You're like, okay, cool, let's move on. To start making jokes, right? That's going to get that endorphin going, you know. And they don't want to talk about whatever it was. Nothing gets dealt with, and we just keep going. It's a different issue, but my point is, if you re-engage after you're relaxed, you could actually get somewhere.
And as you're saying that, I think it's helpful to acknowledge as well that sometimes people who stonewall can get flooded because they don't know what to do. So if that's you and you're hearing us talk about regulating yourself and then re-engaging so that you can get somewhere where things can get better, you might be responding to us in your head, or even like yelling in the car, like, but it never works, or like it never gets better, or like I don't know what to do. And that may be the case, and that might mean you need some new skills.
Right.
That might mean you need to talk to a professional about, here's my situation, here's what I've been doing, what do you think about this? You know, inviting feedback from a counselor who can give you some tips or some different things that you can try to communicate differently, to regulate yourself differently, to interact, maybe even to listen better with your partner, just to manage conflict better together. And maybe even that means couples counseling. Maybe that's something that needs to happen because there's just a gigantic misunderstanding that's going that neither one of you knows how to bridge the gap between. So it may be also that you're getting overwhelmed, and that calming yourself down so that you can re-engage means having another conflict that you get overwhelmed by. So you might need some new skills. Either way, you're probably going to need something. If you're stonewalling, you're going to need some outside help getting you through this so that you can change that pattern and dynamic inside of you and with your partner.
Yeah, the other side of that, or not the other side, but another component to this is a lot of times what happens with stonewalling, meaning like if it's continuous, because we've talked earlier about there's this judgment thing when we talked about contempt and this shame component. It's still there in mass doses with contempt, and a lot of times people will take the choice to exit the relationship. Like I said, it's still there with stonewalling is what I meant to say, but people will try to just exit the relationship because what Aaron was just saying is like it's going to suck to have another conversation. So what you'll do as a stonewaller, because you're just so done, you don't believe the person's going to listen to you anyways, usually part of the component. You don't believe they care about what you're saying. And when they start to care, you tune out while they continue to care. And you're intentionally saying, I'm not going to do this. You're actually getting some odd care from that because they're still there pursuing you. But you're also totally flooded and can't do anything anyway. So the easiest thing to do sometimes is just like, well, we probably need to get a divorce, or we need to do like a breakup, or
just never
like
talk.
Or we're just not
never
going
talk.
to. Right. And that's well, my encouragement to you is like, It could be a skill that you need to learn, which, by the way, is no big deal. A lot of you think like, oh yeah, I don't know anything ever or whatever, right? Don't get victiming on me. Stop it! Stop it! It's an easy type of thing usually to just go learn. And if that doesn't work, that's when you bring your partner in to like either a counseling thing, or you're just ask questions like, you've pointed this out to me. I've tried to learn. This is what I've done different, and you still are acting like there's no movement in the relationship. I feel like we're never going to get over this argument. Do we need to bring somebody else in, or whatever? My point is, usually in relationship where there's a will, there's a way, but you have to respect the physiology behind it. I mean, there's research. I mean, the Gottman's research. This is a thing. And there also is research supporting that when you take some time off reading a magazine or relaxing,
10 minutes,
you are actually in a different space. You literally will have different things you say just based on time apart, because your brain and body need to calm down. That being the case, it means that whatever you're thinking in your mind when you're flooded and stonewalling is not what you would think literally after about 10 minutes of you relaxing. Can you even trust those thoughts, my friend? I do not think that you can. I don't know if you want to close with anything, Aaron?
Yeah, so don't stonewall. That's not good, not helpful. And it's not fun either. It's not fun for you. It's not fun for the other person. And ultimately, I guess where we come from is, if that's happening, we want you to be healthy and happy inside of your own mind, inside of your own body. And if you're having these experiences where you need to close yourself off to your humanity, to your emotions and your experiences in order to be safe, then that's not good. We want you to be able to experience the full range of emotions inside your body and be okay, to tolerate it. It doesn't mean it's always fun or enjoyable, but to be able to tolerate it so that you can come back and more effectively engage with the person in your life.
Who you are you have value just because you breathe air. Have a great day.
Excellent.
Yes.
Yes. Excellent.
Basically changed 45,000 people's lives.
4 to 5,000?
45,000 people's lives. 4.5 million people.
Million.
Did I say that?
Trillion.
Trillion.
How many more can be held just by saying it?
Joe Rogan's like, I can't believe those shrink thing guys beat me to the punch again. This happens.
Joe Rogan's like, the what think guy? What guys? Don't know what you're talking about.
I have to shrink my thought. My what? No comment. This gets weird after this. Oh man, I need a cozy sweatshirt from the swag shop.
Do you?
Mm-hmm. I was just thinking about like those shirts are so comfortable.
Oh yeah.
I gotta.
They are
like they're like just give you a big hug.
Comfortable.
Hugalicious, swaggy shoppy. Hey, that's a great song.
Way to kill some time.
That should be our thing.
You should put it on.